Today we're making 3 bourbon tiki cocktails, or maybe they're tropical cocktails. It's kind of a bigger question. We don't have time to get into that today. Ranging from the modern to the classic to potentially future modern classics, we shall see. Now, we don't talk about bourbon much here, and it doesn't really need to be covered. There are probably 50 to 100 YouTube channels dedicated to bourbon for every one channel dedicated to rum. When I first got into cocktails, I was into gin, which I know is kind of weird, and then bourbon. But this is back when bourbon was not what it is today, when Buffalo Trace and Maker's Mark were kind of the only cool bottles out there, and no one had really ever heard of Pappy Van Winkle. Now, something I didn't know about bourbon until someone recently is where the name comes from, and it comes from Bourbon County in Kentucky. And the name of that county comes from the Bourbon dynasty in France. The county was carved out of Lexington, Fayette, in Virginia, and the Fayette named after the one and only Marquis de Lafayette. And you'll find Lafayettes all over as well, because after the Revolutionary War, Lafayette toured the country and was a hero for his help during the war. It was a very pro-France time in America, and then when France came and asked for our help to gain their independence, you know what we did? We said no, which, when you think about it, it's a very American thing to do. Thank you for our freedom. Thank you for the statue. Now go. I wonder what happened to that bourbon dynasty. But one way to keep your head on your shoulders is to take care of your skin. And Geologie makes award-winning skin, hair, and body products. They have over 10,000 5-star reviews and offer simple and effective skincare and hair care routines. If you're like me and you don't know what to do, then you don't need to learn what to do. Geologie will help because they make it easy. Click on the link below or scan the QR code that you see on the screen right now, and it will take you to a 60-second quiz, and a few clicks later, you are all set. Geologie creates a simple and effective skincare and hair care routine customized for you with ingredients that are proven to work. Whether you're looking for a night cream or an eye cream, or you just forget to put on SPF in the morning, Geologie has you covered. So use my link and code in the description box below and in the pinned comment and grab 70% off. That's 70% off your personalized skincare trial set. There's also 50% off on add-ons that are waiting for you. Now, first on the agenda today is the Iron Ranger from Erick Castro, and somehow, I don't know how, I've never made this drink, and somehow, I don't know how, Erick's drinks have not been here before, and it's just kind of random, but I'm planning things out for the next few weeks, and I have 2 other cocktails of Erick's coming up. You can find Erick on his YouTube channel, Bartender at Large, and he also has an amazing podcast. Our 3 cocktails today require bourbon. I'm using 3 different bourbons, not because you need to. I'm not even saying that each one of these bourbons needs to go with the cocktail. I just have 3 brand new bottles, and these are the bottles that I keep on the bar all the time. But use whatever bourbon you have, whatever bourbon you prefer. Now, in the first one, Erick does call for an overproof bourbon, which I will be using. So let's start with 2 dashes of Angostura bitters, half an ounce of a 1-to-1 simple syrup. If you know, you know. Half an ounce of Velvet Falernum, 3/4 ounces of lemon juice, 1 ounce of pineapple juice, and 2 ounces of bourbon. All right, let's try the Iron Ranger. The main thing you're going to taste, and I think it's going to be this way with all these cocktails today, is bourbon. And bourbon is a great mixer, but in terms of like versatility, it doesn't blend into the background as well as rum does. But that is also what we're going for here today. I made this exactly as Erick Castro does. He even has a video on YouTube. I'll have a link to it in this episode description. But he calls to use an overproof, 100 proof bourbon, and I believe he uses Old Granddad. So the same one I have, but you're getting like nice sweetness from the bourbon, the falernum sweetness there too. He uses velvet falernum as well. But the drink feels very classic, and if you have, friends or if you're into bourbon and you're not quite sure about a lot of the tropical drinks and tiki drinks that you've seen, this is definitely a great place to start to sort of dip your toe into tiki drinks because it has that familiarity with the sweetness and the bourbon as the main focus of this drink, but then you get the other sort of tropical notes in there as well. Moving on, we're making the Honi Honi by Trader Vic, and it's just a Mai Tai with bourbon. If you go through the Trader Vic books, you're going to find so many recipes that are just versions of other recipes, changing out the base spirit and calling it something else. I do think that this is something you should have in your repertoire. If you have a Mai Tai, just know that you can put bourbon in it for those people who really prefer bourbon. So let's start with 1 ounce of lime juice, half an ounce of orgeat, half an ounce of an orange liqueur, and 2 ounces of bourbon. So let's try the Honi Honi. Cheers. So Buffalo Trace is 45% ABV, Old Grandad is 50, and the last cocktail we had, the bourbon comes through a lot more than this one does. This one has the familiarity of a Mai Tai, so if you are not a rum lover, but you want to experience a Mai Tai, this would be the cocktail to make. And obviously Trader Vic sort of capitalizing off of his Mai Tai by just changing out the base spirit here. The official recipes I've seen for this one call, I think, for the Mai Tai mix, but all you need to do is look at your favorite Mai Tai spec and swap out the rum for bourbon. I used a lighter orange liqueur, like a clear orange liqueur, a triple sec style, to just provide a little more of a sharpness, because I don't think we need the big, rich, orangey, barrel influence flavors you might get for something like Grand Marnier, but use whatever one you want. I make this drink all the time because my wife prefers bourbon to rum, and that way I just get out all the same ingredients, but I just change out the base spirit, so it makes things a little bit easier. Now, Honi Honi, I think it gets translated often to kiss or kiss kiss, but in Hawaiian and probably as well other Polynesian areas, it's not referring to like a kiss or an intimate kiss. We're talking about the act of putting your forehead against someone else's forehead or against someone else's nose. You see it a lot in ceremonial things and in weddings, so that's what it's talking about. It's not necessarily talking about lips to lips. The last cocktail we're going to make today is probably the most unique and original of the lot here. It's the Permananet Holiday Cocktail. It's by Trey Jenkins, and I found this on Imbibe. And so many of the ingredients here are things that I have been talking about over the last a couple of years, I guess. So it's nice to use them. And it's something that is just different than any cocktail I've seen before in these modern cocktails. So I thought this would be an excellent thing to try out, especially if we want to expand our horizons when it comes to bourbon tropical cocktails. So let's get started with half an ounce of lime juice, half an ounce of passion fruit syrup, 1 ounce of grapefruit juice, half an ounce of liquor 43, 1 ounce of Averna, and 1 ounce of bourbon. All right, let's try the Permanent Holiday Cocktail. I'm excited for this one because Liquor 43 comes up often here, but we don't use it too much. And then Averna was just used. I always like to find drinks that happen to fit stuff maybe we've been talking about recently. This was just sort of a coincidence, but let's try this one. This is super fun because it's I know what's in it, you know what's in it, but if you serve to someone who didn't know what's in it, like trying to push your way through all the levels of flavor, it is juicy. It is a juicy summertime drink, which you don't usually associate with bourbon. Bourbon very much in the background compared to the other ones, a 101 proof bourbon here too, so a pretty strong and flavorful mixing bourbon, but it's grapefruit juice and then complexity. And I don't think I necessarily pick up Liquor 43. There's, I mean, touches of the passion fruit with like a little bit of that flavor, but as well as picking up some of the tartness there. But yeah, I guess the more I'm letting this sit with me, you're getting a little of the vanilla. The Averna is such a big component of the drink, but it's not taking over the rest of the drink. I have made and drink hundreds of cocktails here over the last couple of years. And there's a mix. There's classic, there's things that are just delicious and something you expect that way. There's kind of things that aren't that great, unusual. This is one of the top couple cocktails that is new to me and different and unusual, yet still delicious and somewhat like fascinating how these flavors all can work together, because you can, if you were to try to do this on your own and not know the specs, you could come up with a real muddied mess of ingredients that would never work, but just the proportions here work together so well. So it's one of the most surprising cocktails I've done here ever. I'm not picking a favorite of today, but if you're looking to expand yourself into a different direction with your bourbon and tiki and tropical cocktails, and this is the one you have to try. So there we have it. 3 bourbon tiki tropical cocktails. I was not expecting these to cover so much ground here, to be so different and I think exciting as they were. But these are all 3 great representations of bourbon, tiki, tropical cocktails. And there's not a favorite here, but I definitely skew towards the newer ones if you're looking for something new and interesting and different. And the Iron Ranger being one that you could really take aim at, like someone who loves bourbon. And then the Permanent Holiday Cocktail just being like very delicious. I want to stop saying unusual because I don't want to turn anyone off from that. It's just like different combination of flavors than I'm used to, and it works and it's delicious. So that's it for this one. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like below. Consider subscribing to the channel if you have not already. If you want to support this channel more, go check out my Patreon page, and otherwise, see you on the next one.